Welcome to MIKEDROP, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He is a professional comedian. He does take naps. He specializes in roasting, politics, economy, America, freedom, and business. And he specializes in Guido observations. He's Charlie Day's facial expression coach. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Bobbie Sausalito.
What's going on?
Thanks for joining us. To the viewer, the listener, as you can see, this is via Zoom. I have held out as long as I can possibly do it. But the reality of it is that over the last 18 to 24 months, with Zoom becoming kind of a staple and part of everybody's everyday life that they've gotten used to, that's just the reality. For me to be able to continue to bring you guests in a more appropriate fashion as it relates to scheduling and not having to wait 6 weeks between episodes, because that's what it takes to get somebody to get here in the studio. We are going to start doing more and more Zooms. Not all Zooms. We'll still get whatever guests we can here in the studio based on their schedule in mind. But you are going to be seeing this format in the coming future. So have at it. If you don't like it, choke yourself. Anyway, so quick lightning round. What's the last thing you do before you go to bed that's not hygiene related?
The last thing that I do before I go to bed that's not hygiene related, let the dog go out to take a piss, because he's about 16 years old now and he has a tough time lasting through the night. So that is literally the last thing that I do before I go to bed. Hey man,
what kind of dog is it?
He's a purebred pit bull.
No shit.
Yeah.
But, is there a cool story on how you acquired him? Like you found him somewhere, or is it just
my brother and I growing up always wanted to get a dog, but my dad, maybe, I don't know if he is or isn't, but told us that he was allergic to cat hair and dog hair. And so we could never get a dog. So as soon as we moved out when I was about 18, my brother and I wanted to get one. A buddy of mine had one just with him one day, had a litter of 12, bought him for $150, which was about the price of his shots. Yeah. And I've had him for over 16 years.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. What's his name?
Biggie.
That's good shit. Yeah. It always cracks me up. And people are like, oh, it's a free dog. Like, there's no such thing as a fucking free dog.
This dude was about as close as possible. And it's crazy because we went to the store like any normal person would. And we were like, oh, English bulldogs are so cute and funny. It was like $1,400. Yeah. And we were just like, how do you justify spending that? Plus you got to buy the cage and the bulls and all the rest. But my buddy was like, look, we got 10 of these beautiful pit bulls. And we said, why not? And he's been luckily healthy pretty much his entire life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully unrelated. What's your best one night stand story?
Can
you even share it?
When I first moved to Florida, I didn't know anybody, and I had been here for a few weeks, and it was kind of like, if you don't have any friends, and I've been self-employed for about 13 years, it's just like, how do you meet people? So I would do all the traditional things, go to the bar and whatever, but was kind of struggling. So I got a knock at the door one day, and it was a girl taking the US Census, and the next door neighbor had not replied to the census. And I was like, hey, I'm new in town. So I asked out the census girl.
Want to add to the census? You no shit, huh? And so you closed the deal based on that, huh?
Yes.
Bang the census chick.
But it was one of those things where it was just like, it was like seize the moment,
Yeah.
Like when they're there, like they're already at your house. So yeah. The census.
Did it live up to the census reputation? Was it worthwhile, or was it pretty average?
For a first introduction to Florida, it was all right.
What is one-time deal?
No, I don't think so. I think there was other experiences, perhaps. I can't remember. It's been a long time, like 12 years, but I feel like there were others.
Yeah.
But
amen.
Census.
What's your favorite Olympic sport?
Favorite Olympic sport?
Doesn't have to be winter.
Yeah, I would say probably I mean, I don't really watch the Olympics much now because of where it is. So
Yeah.
I'm certainly not watching it now, but I always used to love snowboarding and like the half pipes and the flips and what's his name? Shaun
White.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like watching that. I would say that for Olympics.
I think he's in his 5th fucking Olympics right now, which is crazy. I admittedly have not watched a single second of these Olympics for a number of reasons, but fucking snowboarding. What's cool about the half pipe and a lot of the snowboarders is most of them are about high as fuck when they do it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, Olympic athletes.
Yeah,
you love to see it.
Baked out of their fucking mind. What is one activity that you would like to do with Joe Biden?
Well, an activity I'd like to do with Joe Biden. I guess I probably have an ice cream cone because there'd be some funny photos for later. I think the visual of this dude eating an ice cream cone, it just like lends to his mental capacity. It's like that's all he can figure out to do. I remember there was a story a couple of weeks ago where the press corps was like, "Oh, Joe's schedule is empty today." It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday.
And like the fucking president, how can his schedule ever be empty?
Yeah, and Jen circled back. He said something along the lines of, he's having a couple of meetings here and there and such and such. And then there was a 19-car motorcade to the ice cream shop across the street, and he bought a Kamala Harris coffee mug and the ice cream cone, and that's what he did. A 19-car motorcade. So it's like that was like $100,000 trip to get a cone of ice cream. It's like I don't want to get a cone of ice cream because I got videos to make and I don't have any motorcade. This dude's like, let's take the motorcade.
I mean, to me, like something like that. I mean, why wouldn't you just have fucking ice cream brought to the goddamn White House?
It's already there anyhow. So just the whole scene of it, they're trying to soften the guy's image. Yeah. They're like, look, we got a cat. Who cares, dude? There's a war. There's a war you're trying to start in Ukraine, and they're just like, look at this cat.
Yeah, I think his image and himself are soft enough already. But I'd also like to talk about my brand of dog food that just came out. What are the 2 key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those 2 components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero.
Yes.
What is your morning routine when you're in town? Just a normal day.
I'm a late sleeper, so I usually I'm a late sleeper in the morning and I stay up late at night. I feel like I'm most creative in the late hours, kind of lets me calm down. So I usually wake up around 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll pretty much browse my phone for the news stories of the day, see if anything makes me pop out and shoot a quick video. It's like if anything just lights me up immediately, I like to get hitting at the news of the day straight away. I drink cold brew coffee every day. So I'll wake up, cold brew coffee on the front porch, let the dog out, kind of read the news of the day. And then I'm straight to my computer to try to shoot my first reel on Instagram. When I put out long form videos, 5-minute videos, it'll take me hours to research all the stuff and come up with what I'm going to say, pick the right topics so I think it can hit for the day. But the reels, the 15 second to 1 minute clips, I really try to fire out as many of those as I can. So I like to start the day with a new reel. So that's usually my objective the second I open my eyes. Yeah.
Do you ever use like weed or psychedelics or anything to help your creativity, or do you not fuck with any of that?
No, I started smoking weed when I was 13. I probably started smoking every day, I'd say by the time I was 17 or 18. And I smoked pretty much every day for, I would say, probably 15 years. And then 2 years ago, I just decided that it wasn't the right thing. How much more of life could I unlock in the case that if I was to stop doing this? And interestingly enough, I think it must have been 30 to 45 days after I completely quit smoking weed cold turkey that my first video blew up. And now my life has completely changed as a result. And I was the guy that would have sworn to you that I'd be smoking a blunt on my porch when I was 60 years old. No question. And it would be part of my life forever. But interestingly enough, I unlocked another level of clarity without smoking weed. So I think in a lot of ways it really kind of expedited my my efficacy at connecting the dots of life. So as much as I love weed and I love the smell, I do believe that you unlock another level when you stop, if you smoked as much as I do. I've enjoyed a variety of different things. I have kind of an origin story that goes back to when I was about 18, where I ate mushrooms when the sun came up and kind of tried to understand what I would do with the rest of my life. So I believe psychedelics have a huge benefit to a lot of people, because it makes you realize that reality is perception based and it's not as black and white as you might seem. So you can completely change your state of mind in a second with a chemical. In a lot of ways, you almost feel like that's the God chemical, the God particle. You kind of realize that there's more to life than what you can see right in front of you. And I do believe that pretty much every person should give it a try at some point or another. So I'm a huge supporter of that, especially for people, especially for the medical benefits, like the PTSD and people that have other health related issues, to think that they could be depressed, and instead of taking some type of depression pill, which was manufactured in some laboratory, that these other psychedelics could be used to really change and benefit people's lives. So I'm all for all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with it. I admittedly have never really messed with any of that stuff. I mean, I tried smoking weed when I was in high school, and it gave me a headache.
Yep.
I tried edibles as an adult, a few times, and for me, like, it just didn't do a whole lot for me. It kind of felt like the same effect of having a few beers, like a slight buzz, and that was about it. But it took 2 fucking hours to get to that point, and it was just kind of like, what's the point? I never had any type of clarity thing. Admittedly, like, I've not tried a lot of the other things that people recommend for that kind of stuff. I just, for me, I don't really feel the need for it.
Yeah.
But I also, am certainly not against it. And I think, to each their own. I am curious, like, from you starting at a super early age, 2 questions. Do you think that there is an ideal age to wait until before you start doing that, whether it's, your cortex being formed at 25, et cetera, like waiting till then, or before that, after that, what have you? And also the second part of that question is there a happy medium? I mean, it sounds like you kind of went so wide open to where it was actually detrimental and you had to stop to kind of come back full circle. But do you think that there's a kind of a road to hoe, or a good fine line to walk, or again, a happy medium that gives you the ability to take advantage of it without being a detriment?
That's a great question. I think that I don't have regrets about how things progress through life, so it's hard for me to say for certain. However, I would say that up until that point, up until I was 13, I was a high achiever at school. I was getting excellent grades and so forth. What smoking weed did for me is it made me understand a little bit more of the social and friendship part of life. It's almost like people rally around sports, and they like a sports team. They watch the sports team, they go to the game, and it develops this camaraderie. Interestingly enough, weed brought me into different friend groups and created a lot of social situations in my younger years. Instead of me studying or being super diligent with all of my homework and things, I would focus more on the social aspect of it, which I think in a lot of ways has benefited me in so many ways through life and helped me touch the other side of things. Had I not smoked weed, I think I would have been a much more high achieving student. I think I probably would have gone to a 4-year college. I think I probably would be in a full-time job. And I think in a lot of ways it would have taken me down the wrong path, which seemed correct for most of my life, that was the right thing. So I'm thankful for it. I think when it applies to anybody, I do think that it's kind of like, it's almost like, do you like cauliflower or not? Some people love cauliflower, some people don't. Some people like broccoli, some people don't. You ever had a vegetable like a celery and you can't understand how a person doesn't like celery? What is that about? I think everybody is unique and different in their own way. So you just have to find the thing that makes sense for you. For me, it was all a natural progression. I wasn't smoking weed to escape my life. I didn't eat mushrooms because I was upset with things. It was always in kind of a very controlled environment with groups of friends that I really trusted. And it created a lot of interesting revelations in life that I think gave me an appreciative perspective that I carry through to this day. And there's so many different things that I understand as a result of unlocking that level. And like all things, there has to be balance. So I don't know what the ideal age would be. I would say that the excuse that people use, at least as it relates to weed, let's just specifically stick to that. People will say, and I used to say the same thing, it helps me be more creative, et cetera, helps me unwind. I believe that we dismiss our own personal responsibility to be creative, to unwind on our own and create other solutions and say, I smoke weed because of X. Whether or not you think that marijuana is healthy for you or not, I can tell you this much: inhaling smoke into your lungs, whether it's weed or not, is objectively probably not good for you. Smoking a cigar and wrapping it in cigar paper or a chemical paper or even whatever, it's certainly not good. Not only is it wasting time, it's expending money, but it's probably not good for your organs. So even though I understand the idea that it helps you be creative, I would wager that the gym would help you be creative in a similar way. Taking a long walk would help you be creative in a similar way. And a lot of us kind of dismiss our own personal responsibility for relaxing to say, well, I have to smoke weed to relax. You actually don't. You actually don't need really any external to do anything. All the stuff is contained up in your mind. And I think that a lot of people will just use that as the excuse for why they do it. So I would challenge anybody that says that to just think about, what if you could never get weed again? What if you were on, let's just use a stupid example. Let's say you were on probation. What if you smoked weed, you got tested, then you had to go to jail as a result? You probably wouldn't smoke weed. So would you just never be relaxed? No, you would find some other alternative. And I think the biggest thing of all, the greatest takeaway for me was how much time I was wasting. Not only time getting weed, smoking weed, rolling it, being stoned, but the time that I didn't spend otherwise producing, stacks up over time. Even if you just lose 1 hour a day where you're high and not processing in your mind as quickly as you would, 1 hour a day, 365 hours a year, think about what you could produce in that time. Even if you made $15 an hour, you would be wealthier. So I think there's a lot of time loss that impedes your ability to really motor into the next level in life at a faster pace.
Yeah. That's a good insight for sure. Coming from somebody who has obviously vast experience with it. Do you think that for a lot of people, there's almost a red pill, blue pill element with drugs in general?
Yeah, I think that I was just talking with my folks and some of my family friends last night about this. It's almost like when you start to realize that the things that they've taught you could be wrong and could be backwards. I think the normal question people usually say is, why didn't they teach me about a credit score in school? If a credit score is so crucial to your life, why did they not teach me that? Why did they not teach me how to do laundry? Why did they not teach me how to get a mortgage? Why did they not teach me all of these things that are crucial elements of life? How to do taxes? I mean, how is there not a high school class on how to do your taxes, right? I think that once you start to learn that everything that you've been taught is not what it seems, then you start to get into things where, well, what else is not true? Then it could be, maybe it's aliens, maybe it's aliens, maybe it's government. Who knows what it is? The education system. Why is this all backwards? Why is there a McDonald's on every corner, but there's not a place where you can get healthy food? I think that once you get into that realm where you realize that not everything is what it seems, these psychedelics kind of make you realize that reality is not exactly what it seems, and that almost every single thing that you've been taught and every single thing that you've seen and experienced in your life could be inaccurate. So when you start to question everything is when you can really see, in a lot of ways, the truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, the sad part is that for some people that moment never comes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I think that if there's one skill set, that arguably is probably the most important, it's also the most left out, I think, in primary public school is critical thinking, just the ability to look at things that way. And I don't think it's a secret or hard to, come to terms with the fact that it's not in our government's best interest to have a society of critical and free thinkers. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yep.
But which is too bad. But we'll get back into some of the government's fuck ups and their influence here in a minute. I am curious, where are you originally from?
I'm from Connecticut.
Connecticut, no shit. Yeah. There's not a lot of shit going on in Connecticut. I've only been there once, but it was actually just fairly recent. But can you give us kind of the Reader's Digest synopsis on growing up in Connecticut and what that was like?
I think I'm really thankful for Connecticut in so many ways, and the type of lifestyle that it allowed me to lead. First, for many reasons. Number one is that I grew up in a small town of less than 15,000 people, which taught me the value of your standing in the community, where it's, if you screw somebody over, you know that person's cousin, brother-in-law, uncle-in-law, and you see names around town, that you understand that you're part of a real ecosystem. You don't feel like you could screw someone over and never see them again, which I feel like larger cities allow. In addition to that, it allows you to you're insulated for safety. I never felt the threat of crime. I never felt the threat of the outside world. We didn't lock our doors at night. We never really felt that threat. So it was a nice insulated bubble as a kid. In addition to that, the public school system allowed everybody to be on the same playing field. We only knew a few people that went to private school. So everybody went to a public school, but it was a really high quality one. So everybody was getting a great education on the same level. There was a guy that had a G-Wagon and there was a guy that had a Toyota Camry, yet we were all at the same school. So it allowed there not to be a kind of a class system. On top of that, Connecticut has all 4 seasons. It has access to the ocean. You can go north to New Hampshire and Vermont and go skiing. So you have a little bit of everything. You can get to the beach. You can get to Manhattan. You can get to Boston. You can get to the forest. You can go hiking. So it's centrally enough located that it has all of those things. In addition to that, it has the pace of New York, where there's the no bullshit, kind of funny, kind of insult jab style comedy. Well, with also people that are hyper efficient. They understand that the world is moving quick and you got to get it done. So I had that New England mentality that I realized later in life when I came to Florida, that people just operate at a slower pace. It made me think quick on my feet. People in New York are hilarious too. So I think it was great humor. It was just a great balance of all things life. And it taught me small time values while also giving me access to high populated cities. I got a great education. I got to enjoy nature in so many ways. And then all of the other aspects of the world seemed accessible. I could live in the forest. I could live in a mountain. I could live in the sea. I could live in a city. And all of them didn't seem very out of reach. There wasn't very much prairie farmland, Kansas style, but there were still farms and there were still horse farms and cow pastures and all that. So it was just a really kind of storybook, greeting card style upbringing, which was beautiful.
Yeah. So why did you leave?
Because I hate the cold.
Yeah.
I never really liked the cold. I never liked the winter. I was the guy that would wear gym shorts and sandals in the wintertime inside with the heat all the way up. Yeah. I'd go out to get the mail with my sandals and socks and shorts on. And I just never liked the cold. When I was young, sledding, snowman, cup of soup, hot chocolate. Yeah, great. Yeah. But as an older person, I hated going out to a bar and having a huge jacket. I hate getting into a cold car. I hated work. I hated all of the things all of the logistics of living in a cold place. Unless your car's in a garage, you're getting in a cold car all the time. And I just hated being cold. That was honestly it. And I remember I used to run about a 5-mile loop around the city that I lived in when I went to college. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm the best looking single man in this entire place. I need to go where
Modest too.
Yeah. I was like, exactly. I was like, I need to not live here. I need to be where there's better looking people, where things are moving. The house, when I left my small town, I went to the big city, which was 100,000 people in central Connecticut, and it sucks. The house across the street, and I didn't live in the ghetto, but the house across the street had the number spray painted on the house.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking to myself, if I'm going to be top tier capacity of what I believe in life, I need to change my surroundings. I can't go to the same old bar with the same old people. I can't come out to my car every day and pull the handle and have it snap off because it's so cold. I'm never going to get better. I have to challenge myself. And being in a place that was warm just seemed so much more desirable. And being in a bigger city seemed that much more desirable. And New York and Boston didn't appeal to me. I felt I really needed a change, and I was just ready to be warm all the time.
Yeah. Did you have a big family, siblings, or only?
Yeah. One brother. And then my father has two siblings. So I have a bunch of cousins, and my mom's family is fairly large. So definitely a large family unit when all together.
Yeah. Did you play any sports growing up?
Yes. I played soccer, baseball, basketball, football all through high school, won the state championship, undefeated our senior year, was all conference. So did football through the high school career, but did soccer, baseball, basketball, all the rest.
What position in football?
I was center, offensive line.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. All right. So did you move right after high school, or you went to college for a few years? What was that kind of process?
So I went to the University of Connecticut, a satellite campus. So the University of Connecticut, the year that I graduated high school, the women's and men's basketball teams won the national championship at the same time. So the applications for the University of Connecticut spiked that year because it was the hottest basketball school in the nation. It was the biggest university in Connecticut. And I felt that my parents kind of could only afford to send me to a large university like that if I had the in-state prices. So UConn was the target. That year, all the applications spiked. I didn't get into the main campus. I got into the satellite campus, which was in Waterbury, Connecticut. So I went to live in an apartment with my brother in Waterbury when I was 18. I lived there. I was there the first year of college. And then as the second year began, I'll never forget, my brother came home one day and he said, I wish I could unlearn all the stuff that they taught me in this school. College teaches you how to be an employee. Yeah. He's like, if you can get out before they ruin your magic, you'll be better off for it. And I was not really enjoying it. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I remember the first month of my second year there, my student advisor kind of flippantly said, your grades are not good enough. You're not going to be able to get into the business school at the University of Connecticut. You could get in for some other degree, but you're not going to get into the business school. Your grades are already not good enough. And once I realized that I couldn't go for business, I checked out. And I remember telling my folks, this is not for me. I need to find a way out. I'm going to be an entrepreneur and it's going to work. And they said, look, we can't force you to go. We're not going to keep paying if you're not going to show up to class. So they let me go. And they said, and my parents were very intelligent about how they approached it. They understood that if I believed in something, that who were they to say that I couldn't do it? But they also made me fit very rigid milestones to kind of prove my worth. So for example, one of the things my dad said is, all right, well then you're going to start paying the electricity. You and your brother are going to start splitting the electric bill. And then in a couple months, you're going to start splitting the water bill. And you have to figure out a way to do it. Because if you're not in college anymore, then why am I paying for your stuff? So that was a great step progression to being independent. And it ended up working out because I was taught from my grandfather and my father and my mother that relentless work ethic is the way that great things get done. And if you are willing to put in the time and effort, it will work out and you will figure it out. So I just I put my head down and started grinding it straight out of the gate. And I've been lucky enough that I worked so hard that it all ended up working out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the mentality that your parents took, the kind of graduating and baby stepping your way into responsibility that way. Because I think most parents are all or nothing. It's either, all right, fucker, you're 18, get out and you're on your own, and it's overwhelming and it crushes people. Or, they fucking handhold and spoon feed them until they get to that point where they're like, Jesus Christ, I can't fucking do it anymore. And then they're in the same boat, or they end up, taking care of their kids until they're fucking 40, So that's a neat method for sure. So at that point, after you kind of decided, is that when you moved to Florida, or did something happen between those two time periods?
No. So after I dropped out of college, I started my web development business, or really kind of leaned into it and became more of the internet entrepreneur. And I had not made enough money. I tried to do it full time for about 6 or 7 months, and it just didn't work out. So I took a job as a busboy at a 5-star hotel in Connecticut. I did that for 8 months. I was making $18 to $20 an hour, and it allowed me to stack a little bit of cash. And then after that, I was so fed up with it after 8 months that I decided I'm going to try to go and do the entrepreneurial thing again. And a few months later, I ran out of cash again. So I got a job actually in web development, which is what I wanted, to be in. And when I was doing web development stuff, I just remember looking, I'll never forget, I was there for a couple of months, and I remember looking at the time off chart in the break room. And it said, after 2 years here, you get 3 days of time off. And after 5 years, you get however many days off. And after 10 years, you get 8 days off. And I remember just thinking to myself, so you're going to tell me that I get the weekend and 8 days off a year, 10 years from now? Yeah. And it just was such a reality check where I got to figure this out. I was promised that I would get a raise from $15 to $18 at 3 months. And then from 18 to I think 21 after 6 months. And it took until 6 months for me to get the first raise. And I was so disenfranchised by how I had felt I had been lied to that I ended up just starting to show up late, and I got fired from that job. And I remember being fired from that job and just thinking, I will never work for anyone again. This is it. I have to figure out how to make this work, and I'm willing to do anything now. I've tried it. I have to be an entrepreneur. Failure is no longer an option. So I really started going into the web development stuff. And after about 5 or 6 months, I realized that I needed some supplemental income. I used to scrape the gum off of floors at grocery stores with a family friend. And I would go at 12 o'clock at night, go to a grocery store, and I would literally be on my knees scraping gum off the floor of grocery stores for $15 an hour under the table. And I remember thinking to myself, if you're willing to do this, you're willing to do anything. If you can understand and remember this moment, it will benefit you forever. So I did that and made some side cash, and then ended up getting a couple really big jobs. By the time I finished those jobs, I had about $13,000 in cash. And I thought, if there was ever a time to move, this is the time to move. So I was ready to go. It was right about to be the winter time. I had the money. So I just said, I'm out. I'm going to Florida. And I prepared for a couple months, packed everything I could in my car, and I was gone.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, to me, the struggle and the buildup of that is the kind of benchmark story of a lot of successful people of doing, whatever they have. I get asked a lot, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start my own business. I have no idea how. And to me, that kind of synopsizes exactly how it's done. Is you essentially you find opportunities. You do your main gig that at least pays your bills and keeps you, between the lines financially to be able to at least provide for yourself. But then you do other things, or a side hustle, whatever the business is, and you do that on the side until that can take its place. And I think we live in a society where so oftentimes people see successful folks on social media or wherever, and it's like that tip of the iceberg meme where it's like the success piece is that 5% of the iceberg sticking out that you can actually see, but the 95% below it that's freezing and underwater is what it took to get there that nobody really sees. And with the, Amazon Prime shipping, right click, right fucking now, 2 hours later mentality that everybody has gotten so used to and entitled feeling surrounded by, is that, it's like so few people are willing to actually work. It's like, well, I want that. I want to be this. I want to do that. And I want it fucking tomorrow. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way for 99.9% of the people. But so when you went to Florida, did you jump right into doing kind of the same stuff you're doing now, or what did you do after that?
Yeah, I was willing. I had learned through the many trials and errors that it has to be, success is the only option. It has to work. There is no option. And I had decided to never work for anyone again. And I would have felt like I was a failure in life if I did have to go back to work. So I also said, hey, I'm not getting a job in Florida. That is not going to be an option. So I got here, and, for the first couple of months, I was just trying to live life. I was enjoying myself and going out and meeting people and trying to build the friend group and whatnot.
Banging the census check.
Basically, yeah. So but I eventually said, I really need to start selling some websites. So I went down the main drag here in town where I still live to this day. And I walked up the main strip with my laptop, and I just walked into businesses and said, hey, I'm new in town. I make great websites. Would you consider giving me a shot? And, it ended up being a not fruitful day. And I had walked into all these businesses, get out of here. I love my website. Shut up, get out of here, whatever. And I got rejected so many times. I'll never forget. I was almost on the verge of tears. It was February. I was wearing a suit, basically out in the sun, sweating, walking down the street with my laptop, which I didn't even need because I didn't even end up opening it. I remember calling my dad saying, I'm never going to sell out here. Cause I had asked him, how do I sell in real life? Everything had always been referrals when I lived in Connecticut. It was friends of friends and uncles and this and that. So I called him from this bench and I said, I'm never going to sell something out here. This is not work. Your idea sucked, because he was the one that told me, go down Main Street and walk into every place. And I called him. I was so frustrated. And he said, look, imagine if it was that easy. You could just walk in and you're just going to get one right away. He said, go try one more before you head home or whatever, and then try again tomorrow. So I had basically given up. I was standing in front of a flower shop. I walked into the flower shop, and instead of approaching it like I had approached all the other people, I walked in and I said, hey, I love this flower shop. This is such a cool shop. And it was just like a Hail Mary. I said, hey, just so you know, I'm new in town and I'm building websites. I've been asking people, been getting rejected all day, but I love the shop. I don't know if you guys even have a website. Before I went into your other shop, I had researched and whatnot. So I don't even know if you have a website, but if you'd consider it, here's my card. Nice to meet you guys. And I just left, very non-aggressive, not getting an answer. Interestingly enough, 2 days later, the woman gave me a call and I sold my first website to that flower shop. And every job after that, I said, hey, this flower shop down on Main Street, they just hired me to do their website. Would you consider letting me do it for you? And what I did was I underpriced myself to the market and promised them that I would over deliver. I had plenty of evidence, and I was charging probably half to 33% of what a traditional website of this caliber would cost. And I knew that I would get jobs simply because I was underpriced in the market. So my strategy was underprice myself, get my funnel cooking, and then start to raise my prices as I was out of time. And interestingly enough, a few months later, I had kind of another idea where it was, I need to be part of the web community. I joined this website called meetup.com, and I went to a web developer meetup, which was a bunch of nerds and kind of older people. And it was very weird and stuffy. And I thought, if I can't find a good web development group, let me just make one myself. So I started a web development group, and I said, I'll meet you at the Whole Foods dining room at this time on this day if somebody wants to show up. And the first day, one lady showed up, and I talked to her about websites. And the next time, 2 people showed up, and we talked about websites. And then 3 people showed up, and 4 people showed up. And before I knew it, I had 6 or 7 people sitting around me at a table in this Whole Foods where we would talk about websites. And what I realized is that they didn't want to talk about websites. They wanted to figure out how to get a website made. They needed a helper. They really just were trying to save money. So then I started selling services, consulting, training, and websites to that little ecosystem of people. And that was kind of how it all got started. I would sell one for $1,000, sell one for $1,500, a website or a graphic design logo here and there. And I just slowly started to accumulate jobs as it went.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The initial flower shop that you kind of softened your approach with, did that make you pivot moving forward to always have kind of a softer sales approach to all the other stuff, or did you go back to being a little harder sales wise?
To this day, I don't know if I've ever walked down the street and solicited website sales ever again after that point. I realized that efficiency was the name of the game. And if I'm a web developer, I have to understand that what I know is more than the next business down the street. So I thought to myself, why am I not using the internet to market my internet services? It seemed I wanted to always be that connected to the reality type of person, but really it was the internet that I needed to use to sell it. So I started buying ads online, and I started posting a lot of content on my website and using the internet to generate the sales, trying to rank my website locally for WordPress web development so that the leads started coming to me as opposed to me having to go and hunt all the time. And I tried all varieties of things, but I realized that people are ultimately buying from people. They're not necessarily even buying what you have. They're buying the trust that the job will get done. And because they don't really know what it is, I had to be different than all the other web developers. They were all bad communicator, introverted, nerdy types that kind of couldn't explain what it was. So I was the normal guy. I was the cool guy that could explain to you this very nerdy, hyper technical subject. And it kind of taught me that. And I asked the woman that bought the website from me, what made you hire me that day? Because she could have gotten a website from any number of other people. And she said, you reminded me of my son, and the entrepreneurial spark in you made me just want to give you a chance, because I hope somebody would give my son a chance. Mm-hmm. And that kind of taught me a lot too, where it's not so much about what I have, but who I am and whether or not they trust that I'm going to really give it my all to deliver. So that was a great learning lesson.
So don't be an insufferable douche, rather be a nice, wholesome young man that plays to, a mother's sensitivities. I like it. So is that a big part of what you still do now, or how have you transitioned into kind of what your main gig is currently?
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting tale. I had always built websites for other people. And I remember thinking to myself a million times, these guys are getting all the upside. Once the website is done, I get my 5,000 or 3,000 or whatever it is. And then they are off to take all the monetization and upside for the long term. And I was building websites the same way that you would build a house. It's like I built a great foundation, great walls, great bones, great operation, so that it would be long lasting. You wouldn't need a website for 5 or 10 years. So I remember thinking I need to find a way to make the business not about me. It can't be a Bobbie business. It has to be a resellable business. It has to be a business that can chart upwards. So I realized that I need to start owning my own sites. So instead of building sites for others and letting them take it to pasture and make money, I had to build some of my own. So I built 2 websites for myself that I owned, managed, operated, and tried to monetize. And interestingly enough, over the course of the next few years, I learned a million things about what to do right and wrong about these 2 sites. The long and short of it is I got really frustrated because eventually the sites didn't make as much money as they had made initially, and they started to fall out of favor. So I had to build more websites to get my cash flow up. So I got approached by a guy that was trying to sell my sites. He said he had seen them online. Would you ever consider selling them? I put them on this brokerage for this guy to sell these websites. After a year, he was unable to sell these sites. And I was to the point where I was so frustrated with the price that he had told me he'd be able to sell them for, that I was willing to sell them for 1 year of revenue, which at the time was $10,000. Each of them was making 10 grand a year. And I was willing to sell them for $15K just to get them off my books, get the $15K and move on with my life. And I realized how difficult it was to sell these websites. So I thought to myself one day, I had this epiphany, a frustration moment, back up against the wall. How do I figure this out? And I realized that if it's so hard to sell them, then why don't I become a buyer? Why don't I try to find people that are frustrated like me that would sell a website for 1 year of what it's making? So I bought a website that was making $115 a month, and I bought it for $4,000, which was about 30 times or 28 times or whatever what it was making average per month. And I made back the $4,000 on that website in 60 days. Wow. I made the full $4,000 back. And that website to this day will make about $2,000 a month. So I said, well, let me buy another site. So I bought another one, and then another one, and then another one. And I slowly started to supplant my web development, hand-to-hand combat income with free cash flow from sites that I manage. I did that until I got to a point where the websites were making enough in their own cash flow, but I didn't want to build websites anymore. I kind of was at this inflection point where I wondered, I don't want to make websites, but I want to make more money. I'm limited to how many of these I can buy. What do I do? I had been making videos on my Instagram that were having very moderate success, 500 views, 700 views. I happened to make a video at this very crucial inflection point where I was trying to figure out what to do with the next step of my life. And I woke up the next day and one of my videos had 60,000 views, and I had 5,000 followers on Instagram from 1,000 overnight. And I thought, okay, maybe this is something, I don't know. Let me make another one, see if I could do it again. 55,000 views on the second video. I said, I'm going to make a video every day from now until the election, see what happens. After 10 days, I got a text message, or I got a DM from Andy Frisella from First Form. And here's a guy that has 2 million followers. And this guy's like, hey, I got to get you on my podcast. I didn't even know who Andy Frisella was. And I'm just like, wait a second. I have Tommy Vext, a Billboard charting, internationally known musician, rock star. I have Andy Frisella in my DM. I have people that are of high caliber that I didn't even know existed, interested in what I'm producing. And I thought this could really be something that could actually work. So I decided to just make videos full time into the election and see what happened. After about 20 days, I realized I can't build websites anymore. I have to be willing to lose that income to create what could be out of this. This could take me to the next level. So I've just been making videos ever since. My owned and operated websites cash flow enough to keep me alive, and then the Instagram social media business has supplanted almost all of the web development income in the last year.
That's a cool story. There's no two ways about it, and it reminds me in some ways similarly to my journey through entrepreneurship, and I think with a lot of guys that have that kind of light switch moment where they say, I'm fucking done working for somebody else, and I'd rather live out of my fucking truck or car or whatever than answer to somebody else and work for anybody, and once you decide that, then it's, you burn the bridge or the boats or cut the safety nets and you go full speed ahead and you do what's necessary. But I know for me, and it sounds like for you also, is that those pivots that you make are kind of where that journey becomes really interesting and fruitful. And most of them are not foreseen or planned, or even something that you ever would have thought that you'd be doing a year prior, and it's really interesting how that works. But it's fascinating stuff. I know a lot of your content is politics based and current events and business and, even foreign policy and stuff. So I wanted to kind of go through some of the hotbed topics that are today that I know a lot of people value your perspective on. How is Joe Biden doing?
Joe Biden made every wrong foreign policy decision when he was in the Obama White House, and has been a career politician since forever. This guy represents the swamp in every possible way imaginable. And I think that really, as much as I say the guy's not mentally there and mentally fit, it's almost to the point where it's really concerning, because this nation that we obviously love so much, that we care so much for, is really at risk. So I think he's obviously doing an objectively terrible job across the board. And then that's not because I'm a Donnie fan or I'm a Republican or whatever. It's just, if you look issue to issue, topic to topic, it's just bad. What happened in Afghanistan is bad. The spending money relentlessly is bad. And that's not just a Joe Biden thing. Donnie spent a ton of money, and all presidents have. But I think that there's so many things that he represents that make America just look weak. And if your leader is that weak, not only in optics, but in policy, and not even being able to convince his own party to pass certain bills, it's just very troubling. And I think with how bad the country has gotten in the last 12 months, we still have 3 more years.
Oh, no.
So I think it's extremely concerning. And I think it's safe to say that you love America as much as I love America. And we care not about America, but about the people of America and the future of the world. And we understand that, and I don't want to speak for you, but we understand that America's responsibility has and always will be to lead, to be a thought leader, to be a policy leader, and to lead the world into prosperity, and let people know that free, independent people with liberty can make the world a really prosperous and beautiful place. And he represents a threat to it. And so I'm very dissatisfied with it. However, I think that it's like the yin and yang of life. You need to have your back up against the wall sometimes. And interestingly enough, my greatest breakthroughs in life have come at my worst moments. It's when I was nearly on the verge of tears that I sold my first website. It's when I was frustrated, banging my head against my desk, that I realized that the software that I used to build websites was out of date and I needed to learn a new system. That new system rocket shipped my business. Every single thing that's come good in my life has come at the heels of some great depression. And I don't mean mental depression. I mean a depression in the progress, and a roadblock. So this represents, I think, in a lot of ways, the similar downturn and roadblocks of life. You have to have your back up against the wall. You have to realize how bad it gets. You have to realize how much politics is life and not this far and away thing that you just don't want to pay attention to. Politics is what happens to you and your children every day. And I think that this might be hopefully the learning lesson that teaches people that they have to be more involved, pay more attention, and look how bad it can get. Let's never let this happen again. So even though I hate to go through that moment, it's kind of the scrape the gum off the floor at the grocery store moment where you'll never forget it the rest of your life. And I hope that this is a teachable moment for this generation and generations of the future of how bad it could get if we were all to be complacent, head in the clouds. Donnie is a very bad orange man with mean tweets. Let's do anything but him. How bad that can get if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're, largely a victim of our own success generationally. We've had it too good for too long. Yep. And that adage of, strong men create good times create weak men, weak men create hard times create strong men is historically as accurate as anything. And that's for millennia now at this point, that lesson has continued to ring true and be learned the hard way fucking over and over. I will say that there's a strange irony in that, the ability to be able to have that perspective and kind of come together hinges on people fucking up and basically fumbling and making people, kind of point out the obvious that that's what it takes to come together and fix problems. Take, September 12th, 2001, right, as a good example. If you take September 10th and September 12th, that, there's 2 days between there that our country was about as different as it could have been in a 48-hour period as possible. So I agree in that, sometimes that's what it takes to get people's attention and actually do something about it. But there's, to me, the frustrating part is the spin, and this is on both sides. But it sure seems like the left takes a much bigger role or plays a much bigger role, specifically with the media, in burying their head in the sand and gaslighting the shit out of people. Like, no, you don't actually see what's happening. You're fucking crazy. It's actually really good. And you just don't realize it, and it's like, either you think we're that stupid or you're that stupid, but neither one of them is acceptable. And it's really just pissing in everybody's cornflakes. I mean, I hate the fact that it's taken 2 years to get to the point where people are actually paying attention, saying, hey, wait a minute, what the fuck? With a lot of the COVID restrictions and studies from not right-leaning organizations, i.e. Johns Hopkins, talking about how shutdowns don't prevent the spread of viruses, specifically COVID, and how detrimental they are to economies and mental health. But it's kind of like too little, too late. But to play devil's advocate and not just completely trash the guy, I'm going to caveat it with, I am no fan of the fucking guy. But is there anything that he's done that you think is good or that you like?
That Biden has done that I think is good?
Yeah.
That's a tough question. No, I mean, nothing jumps out to me. I spend so much time trying to identify all of the bad things. Nothing really comes to mind off the top of my head. I think if I thought about it for a few more minutes, I probably could come up with something. But
well, we can have 3 minutes of just totally uncomfortable silence while you come up with something.
I would say that some of the ideas that he has pretended to represent,
in theory,
are good. You know, I think that the biggest problem with Donnie, for example, was he put his foot in his mouth so many times and ended up tripping over his own feet. And in a lot of ways, that was the magic that made him great. But in other ways, it was non-beneficial. I think if you're the most powerful person in the world, things like, let's just use a stupid one, like making fun of Rosie O'Donnell, for example, non-beneficial. He made it so that it was hard for people that were maybe on the fence to go along with the policies. If you can hide the policies in immaturity, it's troubling. So I think that what he pretends to represent as being this reasonable person is generally the right idea. His execution is poor, but I do believe that having more leadership qualities is certainly the correct way. Has he done any of that? I would say no, but I believe that the way that they're trying to brand him is a little bit more accurate. You know, being understanding that there's a lot of different types of people in the world and in the US, and that the eyes of the world are on you. And making fun of Rosie O'Donnell, to just use a stupid example, not necessary. You know, no one needed that. And don't get me wrong, I laughed just like everybody else did. But I think that you kind of have to get to a point where it's kind of like if someone with 100 followers on Twitter insults your character, and you have a million followers on Twitter, and you respond back and tell them they're a piece of shit or whatever. You have a million, that's beneath your realm of purview. You don't have to engage with those folks. And I think that that's a thing that we all kind of learn once we're out in the open and exposed, so to speak, where we have attention, is certain things you're just not worth addressing. And I think that he got trapped in that a lot. So I would say that what he represents, or the idea, what they're trying to represent with him, someone that's a little bit more level-headed, I suppose, is the right idea.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd call Biden level-headed at this point.
No, right.
So it seems like his mind is more like a rusty fucking spaghetti strainer than anything else. But, you know, the stuff about Trump, I agree. I think two things is that, you know, he's had so much money for so long and has been the guy at the helm of his own corporation or enterprise, whatever you want to call it, where it doesn't matter how he acts, right? Is that there's a lot of people that want to work for him or willing to work with him, that they don't care how he treats them, what he says. And he's gotten away with that so long, where it's, hey, this is my fucking house. I do what I want. I say what I want, and you can fucking deal with it. And he still is successful and makes enough money for it to not matter. Yep. You know, and so now transferring over into where that's not the case anymore, it really bit him in the ass. And I think, you know, things like, you know, like what you mentioned, the Rosie O'Donnell stuff, or to me, one of the biggest problems I had, and I think made him look like a shitty leader, is firing people within his circle and doing it publicly, like firing them on Twitter and talking shit about them like a child would. And to me, you know, if there's anybody on the planet that needs to adhere to a mental concept of stoicism, it's the fucking president of the United States. Yeah. You know, and exude you will not live between my fucking ears rent free, and nothing can fucking rattle me. You know, is that if you make sure everybody understands that you can't get in my head, you can't flat me, you can't frustrate me, you can't piss me off, that's a really hard fucking guy to be able to defeat, you know, both on an international scale as well as politically here at home. And if he would have just adopted some of those kind of stoic type personality traits and been more, you know, that way, as far as kind of holding his cards way closer and what have you, I think it would have been a slam dunk of being reelected. And I think our country would be in a much, much better place right now. I really do. I mean, I didn't particularly like the guy personally. I mean, not that I knew him, but personality wise, but to me, that's one of those things where actions, like in every way, speak way louder than words. And his actions and policies, by and large, were very, very good for this country. Whereas the transverse with Biden, it's the exact opposite. But all right. So Chinese Olympics, you mentioned you're not watching them for a host of reasons. Is it mostly the not wanting to support NBC and China, or is there more to it than that? Or
that's certainly a part of it. One of the things that I preach to people is that we have to understand that we need to vote with our dollars and vote with our attention. So that's one of them. The other thing is, I don't see any personal benefit to me watching them. I'm not entertained by it. It doesn't matter to me. Even things like football. I love football. I played football. I enjoyed watching it, but I didn't watch any games this season because that's a Sunday. That Sunday I could spend outside. I could ride my bike. I could be exercising. I could be producing. I like outputting and making progress. So anything that doesn't specifically solve either an entertainment or relaxation need or a productivity need, I tend to lean away. On top of that, I think that what they've done, I think that the human rights abuses in China are out of control. And that's not to say that there's not bad things that go on in the US or any other nation. But if we're going to identify this one place, there's a lot of real shitty, horrible things that happen in China. And what happens with those Uyghur Muslims and so many other things are absolutely terrifying. And you have the largest, essentially, prison camp dictatorship style economy there, or type of a country there, that I certainly, if I was on the fence about whether or not I wanted to watch, I would certainly not watch for that reason specifically. But it's not any one. It's not, I've been watching the NFL in the playoffs, and I don't like the things that they said, but I enjoy the competitive nature of sport. I enjoy the world's greatest athletes competing and working hard. I love to see that. So it's a little bit of everything, but I would say the fact that it's in China certainly pushes me over the edge of, I'm not watching or consuming any of this. They don't deserve any of my money or any of my attention. And I would much rather be producing than consuming. And at least as it relates to that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I ultimately, I feel sympathy for a lot of the athletes, that are gifted, that have worked their ass off, that, have spent their entire lives, and they have a very short window of time that, and it's just at the right time, age wise, yep. prime of their life for their sport, et cetera, that it gets kind of trampled on by all of those things. And I think some of the other athletes, whether it's that Eileen Gu chick that, was born in San Francisco and last minute decided she's going to ski for China and wins gold. And then just a lot of the kind of social justice bullshit that some athletes, not most, but some attach themselves to. And really, it's kind of like, dumping oil in a fucking swimming pool. It's like, most of the pool is still fresh water, but there's just enough to kind of taint it and make people say, you know what, fuck it. For the same reason, a lot of people aren't watching the NFL or even Major League Baseball. It's just, basketball, the same thing. It's like viewership in all of these areas where historically they have not been infused with politics or social justice issues or what have you. Now that they are and have tanked considerably. You'd think that there'd be kind of a more, or a better understanding on the business side from, the networks, from the athletes, from all that stuff, that they would, maybe understand that a little better, but ultimately it's up to them. Ukraine, what is your position on the U.S.'s involvement or lack thereof via Ukraine and kind of what's going on there and whether or not we should do anything?
I only have so much time in the day, and so I don't know everything there is to know about it, but I would say that I generally subscribe to the Ron Paul view of the world when it comes to foreign entanglements.
Mind your fucking business.
Yeah, we don't need to be the policeman of the world, number one. Number two, I remember seeing the president or whatever they call him of the Ukraine saying, we're good. And there was this contentious phone call between him and Joe about whether or not we needed to be there. We're not protecting our own border. And hundreds of thousands of American citizens are dying from fentanyl overdoses from people coming in at the southern border. In addition to that, you have human trafficking violations. You have probably terrorists and a variety of other people pouring over our southern border. Yet we're sending thousands of troops to defend a border over there. It almost brings me to full stop just based on that alone. Even if things were crazy over there, that's not of our concern. And I think that I was just talking with a friend the other day about this. The fact, I wouldn't trust Joe Biden to run my donut shop for 7 days, let alone choose policy decisions that represent us and put us in danger, right? Or the lives of thousands of our armed forces, which are on the way over there. Number one, we're spending a ton of money. Bad, number one. Number two, we're not the policemen of the world. Number three, their president says that we don't need to get involved. I don't know the details, but that seems like a good amount. We're not protecting our own border. That's insane. On top of it, I would wager that Putin is a lot more mentally astute and sharp than Joe is right now. And in a lot of ways, this guy that's been in control for all these years and is very connected and is pretty much a hyper intelligent individual, this guy is probably 10 steps ahead of us. Wouldn't it be crazy if it was so obvious that this guy played us right into his hands, where he causes a little stir to cause us to overreact, gets Joe to make another stupid decision, which he's been known to do. We get there and he uses that as the sign that we're being aggressive. And then he goes to a country like China or Xi Jinping and says, hey, look, the US is going to get aggressive over this. This is nothing. What if you and I teamed up? And then now you have this photo of the leader of China and Putin standing together, just saying, just so you know, there's three world powers and here's two of them. What are you going to do about that? Because if we were to really have a competitor in the world stage, that's who it would be. A unification between those two countries, not only because of their geographic location and the advantages they have with natural resources, gold reserves, and physical human beings, that really represents the greatest threat to us. On top of that, dollar hegemony is basically the thing that makes the U.S. of value on the world stage. If there was to be some other competing currency that really was to really give us a run for our money, for example, one between Russia and China, we would really be in a lot of trouble. So I would wager that he's 10 steps ahead. He knows the moves that we're going to make, and we're playing right into it. And to me, it seems like a trap. To me, it seems like a non-issue. And meanwhile, we have hundreds of thousands of people dying here from purely fentanyl over the border alone. And to think that we're going to send thousands of troops over there and risk American citizens' lives, young men and women, to defend some shit that we probably shouldn't even be involved in, it's a preposterous trap. And I think that it's more evidence that our decisions about who sets the policy have a lot of negative ramifications. And I don't care if you don't like Donnie, this shit is bad. And it's just further indicator to me that instead of watching the Olympics, I need to produce content. Instead of taking the trip, instead of going to the concert that I want to go to later this month, I'm going to go to CPAC and meet more people. I'm going to try to build my network, build my distribution, spread the truth, and vote with my ears and my attention and my dollars and my feet.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think one of the things where, the Russia-China thing, that relationship proves to be Dr. Evil-like, and how dangerous it is almost, that I think a lot of people don't realize. There's no question many Americans, I think, overvalue or are overly afraid of Russia's standing as it relates to their economy and their military presence, with one main exception, which I'll get into in a second. Their GDP is less than Italy's. Right. So like from an economic power standpoint, they don't bring a whole lot to the table. Right. Militarily, similarly, would they be a much tougher fight than the Iraqi army? Yes. Would we still have any trouble with them? Not really. Right. The one flip side of that is that China has those two things in spades, right? Their economy is almost as strong as ours now. It's not far off. And I would bet that 8 to 10 years from now, it will eclipse ours, if not sooner, with the printing of money and the devaluing of our own currency and through means of inflation and everything else. Their military is fucking enormous. Whether it's ships, planes, troops, the technology, similarly, it's beginning to eclipse our own nation's military. The one thing that they don't have, and this is where Russia, or there's two things really that Russia really adds to the table. Not that China doesn't have a strong cyber platform in terms of an offense, but Russia has the most nukes of any country on the planet. They have more than we do. And they've got, I think it's like 5,000 some odd nukes. The United States has 4,000 and some. I mean, at that point, like, it's still 10x what you'd need to destroy the entire planet. But China has a few hundred, so when you combine those two and you've got massive economy and military force on one side, coupled with really, really savvy cyber offensive capabilities and a shit ton of nuclear weapons, that's a fucking bad combination, and so people should be, I think, more worried than they are when you see that now. But it also reminds me a little bit to your point that you made earlier about the kind of poking and prodding and being 10 steps ahead. It does remind me a little bit of jujitsu. I don't know if you do jujitsu at all, or chess, and that they're very similar, and that, the setups and the feints and I'm going to do this, 3-4 things to get them to do that, which is going to put me in the position to do this. I think is largely what's going on now. And they're, when you have a guy like Biden and an administration that's more worried about proper use of pronouns and handing out $30 million worth of fucking crack pipes, you have a society that's very easily tricked into being pissed off about the wrong things, being worried about things that aren't worth being worried about, and not worrying about the things that they do need to be worried about. And so it is fucking troubling, and America needs to pull their head out of their ass fast, or they're going to shove it even further up than it already is. But the Canadian trucker protest, i.e. the Freedom Convoy, have you been paying attention to that?
Yes, thoroughly. Very
what are
deep.
your thoughts?
I think it's
insurrection.
I think it's tremendous. I think it's the most well-organized, largest peaceful protest maybe that's ever existed in history. I think that they are deserving of a tremendous amount of respect, and I'm all for it. I think there's a beautiful thing about it that makes it different than all other protests that I've ever seen, is that they have a bedroom at the protest site, and they can't be, and the fact that they're able to do that and exist there for a long period of time gives them a unique advantage that I feel no other protest has ever really had, where they can really gridlock things. And I think that of all people in the world to do it, Canadians tend to be very, very kind and generous and loving people. And the fact that you have kind of the nicest people in the world, all with that are very thoughtful about all the things that they do, and they happen to convince people that are vaccinated to go and protest against it. And the fact that it was so well organized and so needed at just the right time, I have so much respect and reverence for them. And I think the way that they're handling it is so great. And the fact that there hasn't been any violence or any destruction, I think is tremendous. And I have all the respect in the world for them. I think it is absolutely needed. And I think for the first time in recent history, I've always felt that the US kind of leads the world. And now I feel right now the world is being led by those people in Canada. I feel like they're showing the world what can really be done when people unite in and I think it's beautiful. It's a sight to see. I think it's a historic event, and I'm all for it. And I think that a little bit of discomfort is worth it, considering if you look at the protests that have happened really in the United States, all the ones that have been effective, the free market kind of dictates to people what you have to do in order for things to work. You have to disrupt things. It's really sad that that's the case, but that's just the way of the world. If you stand in a park for so long and the news cameras don't go on you, you don't exist. It doesn't matter. So they understand that there has to be disruption. What is the least invasive disruption that shows that you're not a chaos creator, but you get noticed? They organize in the nation's capital. They leave space for emergency vehicles to get through. They're well organized. They're willing to allow the police and whoever else to be there and do whatever they got to do. They're not destroying anything. They're not hurting anyone. I think it's just brilliant. And I'm so thankful that it's happening right now.
I do think it's surprising that, or I would say it's telling that if you've pissed off basically the most polite people on the planet to the point where they're doing this, that should tell you everything you need to know about how fucked up your policies are. It's like getting a nun to swear at you. Right. I mean, it's wild shit. I did see that there are instances where they're like confiscating people, bringing them fuel to keep their trucks running, which, is fucking nuts. I mean, and what really bothers me, I think, on our side, specifically the media, is the way that some media outlets are portraying it as insurrectionists and violent protesters and alt-right neo-Nazi white supremacists and all this other inflammatory, coined terms that get thrown around every time they don't have any other way to try to defeat something that's kicking their ass, is throw the racism or supremacy card out, which is laughable at this point. I mean, it's been overused so many times that it just doesn't even have any teeth anymore. But
exactly.
All right, so I guess kind of moving on to other things, kind of in this country, I guess, or actually impacts in this country, but something that's worldwide that seems as kind of in the same vein as the freedom fighters, but on the financial side is cryptocurrency, NFTs, and the relationship between the stock market, where gold plays a role, the S&P 500, and whether or not it seems to kind of dictate where crypto goes and whatnot. I'm curious to get your takes. Do you mess with it? Do you follow it? And what are your thoughts on it, generally speaking?
Yeah, I bought a bunch of Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin a long time ago, several years ago, and I made a little bit of money. But to me, I found a tough time. The thing that really made me get away from it was understanding what is the objective value and how do you calculate it. When I buy a stock, for example, I'm buying a piece of a business that has intellectual property, that has cash flow, that has sales, that has assets, that has profits. I can look at the balance sheet every quarter and I could say, look at these profits. If the business is valued at $100 billion and they're making $10 billion of profit per year, do I think this company is worth a 10x multiple? Can I understand the valuation? If I buy a stock of the company at its current market price, if they were to sell the business for that market cap, would it be worth it if you were to buy it outright? And it helps me understand what a business is really worth. You can look at the price to earnings ratio, and that's how you value any stock. The same way you would value any traditional business, gas station, sandwich shop, whatever else. And the same way that I value websites when I buy them. I look at the long term of it. How long has it been making money? How much profit does it make? What multiple am I willing to pay? What future earnings am I willing to bet on? When it comes to crypto, like Bitcoin, for example, there is no value basis. The coin itself holds no value. It only holds value if somebody else is willing to pay that amount. Whereas, and you could say that about any asset. However, these businesses are cash flowing. Bitcoin has no cash flow. There is no balance sheet. There is no generation. There is no output. There's no value to be held. It is just an invisible token. And some people will say, well, so is fiat currency. Yeah, well, fiat currency, if you don't pay in taxes, if you don't pay with that currency in taxes, you can go to jail. So it has the full backing of the United States government and every country in the world that accepts it. Whereas Bitcoin is whoever wants to pay for it tomorrow. The fact that I can't understand how to evaluate whether or not a coin or a tag will go up or down based on a balance sheet makes me feel uneasy about it and not believe that it's an investment. I believe that it's an effective way of transferring money from point A to point B. And I think that the blockchain certainly is a world-changing technology that is certainly deserving of our attention. However, how do you evaluate something that has no assets? How do you evaluate what a Bitcoin is going to be? Why is it worth 100,000 versus 5,000? There's no rhyme or reason to it other than the pulse of the marketplace and what people think that it's worth. Because of that reason, I don't find it to be an investment. So I don't have any Bitcoin. I think that a lot of people have made money in it. And I think that it certainly is worthy of attention. I won't completely dismiss it for other people who find other needs for it. But I personally don't have any cryptocurrency now, and I don't feel like I'm missing out in that respect. I think there's a lot of manias that happen in the financial world, and I like buying traditional businesses because I'm a long hold investor. If I buy a stock in Verizon, a company that I pay every day, a company that I subscribe to every day, a company that I believe generally is doing the right thing, that I can see their balance sheet, they pay me a dividend, I feel much more comfortable with my investment sitting there for the long term. Whereas with Bitcoin, I was always looking at where it was. So when I look at my stocks, I could look at it once a month and it doesn't matter. Bitcoin, I was looking at it every 10 minutes. So I like to invest in assets that I can control. I like to invest in assets that I can influence the upside of them. And for that reason, I don't know how to value crypto, so I don't invest in it anymore.
When you say for that reason, that makes me think of Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. For that reason, I'm out.
Right.
Exactly.
I love Shark Tank.
Oh, Mr. Wonderful. I'm going to preface this with, I am not an expert. I'm not a crypto analyst. I'm not a consultant as it relates to crypto. I will say that my viewpoints are different now than they were, say, 2 years ago, which mirrored yours almost to a T. Is that, it didn't make sense. It's like fiat currency is the representation of a GDP or an economy of a country. And so it's tangible. You can quantify and wrap your arms around why that currency is worth what it is or not, why it tanks, why it goes up, and et cetera. I think where cryptocurrency gets kind of a bad name, and has people reluctant to get involved in it is in a couple of main things. Number one is first and foremost calling it currency. Is that it's a bit of a misnomer. Yes, there's an element of it being a digital token / currency that exists, but it's really more of a representation of software and or a service based on what platform and what coin it is. And I think, that was probably the biggest turning point for me to understand kind of better how it works. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not a fucking expert. I just, my views and philosophies on it have evolved over the last few years to look at it a little more. I hate to even use the word favorably, but just maybe a better understanding of how it actually works. And I think, take Microsoft as an example. Microsoft overwhelmingly is software, right? Is that if you say to yourself, like, well, what product do they really have? Well, they have operating systems. They have software that allow you to do certain things digitally. Yep. And, with most cryptocurrencies, that's kind of the same thing, is that, a lot of people I don't think realize while it may seem nuanced to an outsider, there's some pretty significant differences in the different crypto assets that what they do, what they bring to the table, and why they're valuable are vastly fucking different. So looking at it that way, I think is an important distinction. Also looking at it as just a place to kind of shelve your money is also something that I think gets wildly misrepresented or underutilized, specifically with staking and mining, or just putting US dollars into say Tether, a digital coin that you can just, instead of using a bank account, get 10% annually on $100,000 that you put in there, vice basically nothing by having it in a Wells Fargo account. So that brings a lot to the table too. And I think lastly, the ability to be able to move it from an anonymity standpoint, and not even from a getting out of paying taxes or black market kind of shit that sometimes gets paralleled into kind of trying to make it look bad, is that excuse me, is that just being autonomous in from a liberty or freedom standpoint, is that I can send you money or vice versa, and it's just between you and I, and nobody else has to play a role. Nobody else is getting a fee, and I think that, that single element of keeping centralized banking at least a little bit honest, or at least threatening them to say, look, there is an alternative fucking solution here that you can't access, that you can't be a part of unless you get into it the same way every other swinging dick does. And to me, I think if I had to pinpoint one thing that I like about it, it's that it's kind of a middle finger to the big family old school money that exists out there, that steamrolls everybody into mortgages and loans and other big financial institutions that butt fuck everybody and have set up a society that's beholden to them. And so for that reason, I like the applications of crypto. I think the volatility of it is very frightening to people. But to your point, from a long hold game standpoint, I mean, if you look at it historically, whenever you bought in, think about it. If you had held on to it now and not looked at it, where would you be? I would bet that you'd be 10x or more, where you're at when you sold it, so, and that's true really with all coins, is that the volatility, I think, makes people think that it's going to drop to zero and never come back and whatever. But if you look at the long form charts of growth and pick any fucking coin, overwhelmingly you see stock market like growth that just continues to go up, even though it bounces around a lot. When you stretch that chart out, it's much more linear and gradual. Whereas, the stock market has almost 100 years or 100 years plus, of reference to look at and say it's gone from here to there. Whereas, crypto, because it's such a short amount of time, it's harder to wrap your arms around its growth and volatility and looking at it as a more stable asset. But again, not a fucking expert. I like what I see out of it, and I think it's interesting. And more than anything, I just like the element of being able to tell big banks to go fuck themselves. Is pretty neat. But
I agree with all that.
Yeah. So, kind of going into some more pop culture type stuff, there's two last points that I have written down that I wanted to talk about. One is just a stat I saw on a news blip today that 7 in 10 people live paycheck to paycheck here in the United States. I know I was at a point in my life not that long ago, I absolutely fell into that category. It sounds like, you were in that same boat. What would your advice be for those 7 out of 10 people that live paycheck to paycheck, and how to not be that way, other than the story that you shared? Or is that just that simple?
I think that auditing your expenses is one thing, but I don't think that you can cut your way to prosperity. I would encourage people to have and always have some type of alternative side hustle. I think that it has never been easier at any point in time to have a side hustle than it is right now. And to me, if I was in that position right now, the first thing that I would do is I would sign up to be an Uber Eats driver, and I would start dropping off food. Any person could do that. You could do it at 1 o'clock in the morning, or you could be an Uber driver with your car. You could just turn on the app and make an additional $100 or $200 a week at any point. I think that the gig economy lends itself to any person with even the most basic of skills to be able to do that. You can ride for Uber Eats on a bicycle. So I think there's no excuse. You have to have a side hustle. And I understand that people's time is limited. Okay, well, let's say that the kid is asleep. All right, put the kid in the car seat while they're sleeping or whatever in the back, and go drop off a couple Uber Eats orders at 11 o'clock at night or whatever you got to do. And I think that the side hustle game is essential. In addition to that, I think that we squander a lot of productive time. And if anybody was just to figure out a way to spend that time on something that would change their position, they would live a better life. So for example, if you were living paycheck to paycheck and you're not on YouTube learning a new skill for an hour a day, then I have no sympathy for you, because there have never been such an opportunity for people to learn an additional skill. There's jobs you can do online, for example, where you can write content. Maybe you're not a good writer, but most people know how to write. You can go online and you can write content for websites and make a couple cents a word and knock out a couple articles every night and send it to a company in the UK, in Australia, or whatever else. The internet is the ultimate side hustle engine, and the gig economy has never been more accessible to anybody, anywhere, at any time. If you can just think about how to use that free time that everybody has to be a little bit more efficient, to get an extra $100 a week, I think you could get out of that situation fairly easily if you just develop an additional skill. That's the big problem that people have. I don't know how to do anything. Well, figure it out. You could go online, you could go on TaskRabbit, and you could help people move. You could help people reorganize their closet. You're capable of something. And I think the gig economy creates that opportunity for everybody. And I think there's no excuse. People go on TaskRabbit every day and say, I want a person to help me pack my pack my, organize my closet, or rearrange so the furniture in my living room. $20, $50, whatever it is. Go on Craigslist, pick up an odd job. I think the side hustle game is the quickest solution to that. And I think that if you're not learning a skill, but you're spending an hour a day watching Netflix or going to get coffee or smoking a joint or whatever is the case, if you were to just use that hour, you'd have an extra 7 hours a week. Even if you made minimum wage, that's an extra $70 to $100, and that could change your position in a couple of weeks, couple of months time, and you could hopefully get out of that.
I think that's a super valid point. And to look at, to me, the Uber Eats thing is the varsity play there, far more than an Uber driver, because at least for me, like I don't want to fucking sit in there with total strangers over and over and whatever, the dropping off the food thing is mindless. Same with Instacart. Right. An Instacart driver where you're going grocery shopping for people 100%, like, that's free money basically, for doing menial tasks. And I think the people that get that and are willing to do that are the people that are going to get to where they need to be. The other folks that don't remind me of the National Lampoon's Vacation, where Chevy Chase's family goes and visits cousin Eddie at their, farmstead in Kansas or wherever the fuck. And she's like, yeah, well, he's holding out for a management position, and it's like, that's a lot of people's mentality is like, well, that's beneath me. I'm not going to fucking deliver food. And it's like, well, if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul and eating ramen and, your lights are getting fucking shut off, then you got to do what you got to do to get out of that hole. And I also think doing shit like that also teaches you about yourself. And it also helps you figure out what the fuck you want to do for a living, even if it's not that. Like no matter what, I don't want to do anything in service related or, whatever is that, it gives you a lot of ammo and input, and value adds to your life in terms of, figuring out what it is that you want to do for a living. So great points. Last, but certainly not least, just kind of a fun thing. There was a guy here in Texas that owns a mattress chain named Jim Mattress McInvale that bet $4.5 million on the Bengals winning. Do you think he's going to lose his fucking money?
I haven't. The first football game that I watched this year was the division champions. That was the first football game I watched all year. So I actually don't know. I did see yesterday online that this is the most bet on Super Bowl in history. I think there's 31 million bets or $31 million, probably 31 million bets. I forget what it was.
It's got to be way over 31 million bet.
Yeah. So
if he bet $4.5 million, it's probably billions of dollars bet. I have no doubt, but
yeah, I think I saw it on Drudge earlier. It said 31 million bets, something like that. So, I don't know. I think that from what I do understand about the situation, I believe that, if I believe that the Bengals quarterback is a rookie this year, right? Or I
think it's his second year. But he was an interesting thing about him is he was a first round, first round draft pick.
Yep.
He also is a Heisman winner and a college national championship quarterback. So I think there's only two other NFL players in the history of the NFL that have won a national championship, a Heisman, and a Super Bowl.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that rarely happens. And you think about it, like it typically does pan out. Like most Heisman winners don't do much in the NFL. I mean, there's some that are legends, but a lot of them kind of fall off and you don't hear much about it. And a lot of the really good college quarterbacks that were national champions, whatever, a lot of times kind of flop in the NFL. There's a weird disparity from great quarterbacks in college versus the NFL, and it just seems to not pan out as well, which is weird. But at any rate, they're looking up the stat here. I'm curious to see what's been bet. But
what I would say, based on no experience of seeing what happened for the season, from my days in football, here is what I would conclude: the fact that the Rams are playing at their home stadium gives them a little bit more excitement, which means that the Bengals, knowing that they're playing at their home stadium, it's almost like a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
The second thing is you have this guy that's his second year or whatever, and that it's very uncommon for him to be that good. On top of that, the Bengals, I bet, as far as I can understand, a couple of years ago were one of the worst teams in the
last
league.
year. Last year they were one of the worst.
You got worst team in the league. So to me, that's the type of thing that makes you push a little extra harder in the gym. That has you do that extra set, do that extra sprint, is when you believe that everyone thinks you can't, it kind of gives you that gas. So I think the fact that they're not at home, not going to have the cheers, they're preparing to deal with that psychological pressure. And the fact that they have something to prove, I think gives them that little bit extra gas that maybe that'll do it. And I hope for them that it does. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I admittedly have not, closely followed the NFL ever since the kneeling during the anthem stuff. I've kind of not really paid much attention, but I know that, the Bengals weren't supposed to beat the Titans and they beat them. And then they sure as fuck weren't supposed to go to the Chiefs home stadium and beat them. And they did. So It's probably a flip of a coin, but it should be a good game. Hopefully the commercials don't suck this year. And are overly politically correct and are just boring like they have been the last couple of years. But I suspect that'll probably be the case. But
I think I saw a meme the other day where it was something along the lines of, did you know they're playing a football game before and after the Eminem, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg concert?
Yeah, it's no shit.
Yes.
It's 8 billion thus far has been bet on this fucking Super Bowl. So that's wild shit.
It's Joey stimulus cash.
I know it. Wonder I'm sure the U.S. government's got some odds in there somewhere, but
I know, right?
Awesome talking to you, my man. I appreciate it. Great perspectives on a lot of things. I love your story, and the content you put out is fantastic. Where can people find you online to follow you?
So home base is on Instagram at Take Naps. And BobbieSauce.com is links to everything. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Getter, Telegram,
Grindr.
Everywhere there is to find. Yeah, Grindr, Christian Mingle. So BobbieSauce.com is the home base, or if someone can't spell that, followBobbie.com is all my links as well.
Great shit. Anything else you want to add or talk about before we wrap it up?
I would say this is the most important thing that I keep trying to get out there, is that all great people started out as relatively insignificant folks that decided to do great things, that decided to be great. And historically through time, all great people have started out that way. They decided to be great and they did great things. And I think that we have to also understand that our thoughts are the only thing that has ever made anything in the world. Every great change, every great movement, every great business, every great everything started first as a thought. Walking down the street, in the shower, at the gym, doing whatever, sitting around, reading a book. It's a thought. Everything starts there. So if we could understand that the Canadian trucker Convoy began as a thought in some guy's mind, what if we took the trucks to Ottawa and now here it is changing the world? If we understood how important our thoughts were, we would audit the way that we think. And if we change the way that we think, we can get ourselves out of a lot of problems. We can solve a lot of problems, and we can ultimately change the world. So instead of spending an hour and a half a day being high, if you could spend an hour and a half a day thinking about how to be productive, thinking about how to change your life, that hour per day would stack. And if you can just audit the way that you think, the world changes from there. Fix yourself and your internal, and all of the world's problems will be resolved. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but over the course of history and for generations to come, so long as we make that a part of our day-to-day health.
Yeah. And I can't think of a better way to wrap this conversation up. It's phenomenal advice. And one that, anybody listening can't go wrong by taking. So really, really masterfully put. And I appreciate you both coming on and sharing your story and your viewpoints on everything. So yeah, appreciate it very much. We'll definitely have to have you come on again, maybe in studio the next time you're in the area. And appreciate it again. To you guys out there, hopefully you enjoyed this first Zoom session. There will be more to come. And if you have any feedback on it, by all means, shove it in the comment section or just email us, either one. But if you're listening via audio, you can go on YouTube and watch it and comment there. It's probably the easiest way to communicate feedback with us. But Appreciate your support. It's unwavering and humbling each and every episode. Can't thank you enough for continuing to tune in after all these years of doing it. So thank you for the support. We'll see you next time. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.